our last Royal Navy warship to be built here at Chatham. We did build the subsequent Canadian Navy warships, but she's the one we built for the Royal Navy here in 1962. She was commissioned in 1964 and she was decommissioned in 1991. But actually what happened in those intervening years we don't know a huge amount about, because she's still bound by the Official Secrets Act. Another 20 years on that as well till we find out any of her secrets. Sometimes we get ex-submariners, but she also would take special forces to where they were being deployed to. So we sometimes get ex-special forces on here, or ex-people who got a lift on her somewhere and they're like, I couldn't possibly tell you where I went. If we just take a look at her outside first, so we've got her big bulbous sonar dome there at her bow. So underneath that is the sonar equipment, so the sonar are the eyes and the ears of the submarine. That's what she used to be able to move around under the water, but also to be able to obviously do the eavesdropping and the spying and the reconnaissance that she was built to do. And then underneath that you can see those three kind of rectangles cut into the side. There's three on the other side as well, and those are torpedo doors. They correspond with the 6 torpedo tubes we're going to see when we get down inside. And then of course you've got her ballast tanks. I always describe her as like she's the opposite of Doctor Who's TARDIS, because she looks massive on the outside and then you get down inside and she's actually really small. Because obviously most of her bulk is taken up with those, and the way ballast tanks work is that those valves, those kind of big ovals you see dotted around the top, they open up, seawater rushes in, she could be submerged beneath the waterline in under a minute, and then she would, with the help of these kind of hydroplanes you see on the top, look a bit like big flippers, there's 2 on the top there and 2 on the stern at the back, they control the angle and the depth of the dive, and then compressed air can be pushed in that forces out that seawater. She then becomes more buoyant and she achieves the buoyancy that she needs in order to surface. And then finally, if you just have a look at her fin up here, she's got 4 masts sticking out of that fin. So enclosed in there is also the conning tower, you know, the traditional kind of pipe that sticks out of the old style submarine. So the conning tower is housed at the front, and then you've got the attack periscope, which is really narrow at the top, and then you've got the search periscope that's a bit wider, and then you've got the radar mast and the electronic communications mast. And we'll see the other end of those periscopes when we get down in the control room. So let's go down. We're about to go down 2 ladders. We're currently standing in the torpedo compartment. 6 torpedoes would be housed in these tubes here, with a further 18 around us in this compartment, totaling 24. And this is what we're talking about. This is a Mark 8 torpedo. It's almost 7 metres long and at 1.5 tonnes. The Mark 8 torpedo, you might remember the sinking of the Belgrano. It was a Mark 8 torpedo that was fired at Belgrano to give you an idea of what they can do. This compartment also was an emergency escape compartment. So in the event of emergency, this hatch gets sealed at the back. This entire compartment gets filled with seawater, and the men are attached to this built-in breathing system, or bibs, that goes, you can see it snakes all the way around and brings you up to the escape tower. They would be attached via, so these breathers hanging down here, they'd be attached via these. And then you would be wearing this red escape suit, and then you would take your big final deep breath, and then up you go through that escape tower and hope you get to the surface without getting the bends or running out of oxygen. Which doesn't bear thinking about, really, does it? Yeah. They were so well trained that they would be able to then enter the submarine service. So we're in the junior rates mess. 21 bunks in here, 21 of the 69 crew. All your downtime is spent in here when you're not on a watch. And there are no dining rooms, there are no lounges, everything happens in here. They would also come on board, and as you can see, there's no wardrobes, there's just these little lockers under here to put your stuff in. So you'd come on board, you'd have another change of clothes that you change into, and then pretty much that's what you would wear for the whole of your tour. That could be anywhere between 3 weeks and 3 months. And also during that time, they would not wash. So they would wash their hands and their faces, that was about it. Nobody bothered with anything else. And so I know we said about the Official Secrets Act and we don't know a huge amount about what she got up to, but what we can tell you for sure is she absolutely stank. Yeah, it was interesting conditions, but they loved it. There's the amount of submariners who we've had on board who said it was the best years of their lives. They wouldn't change it for a thing, but Yeah, I think you've got to be a special kind of person to put up with these conditions, haven't you? Should we make our way through? So, this is where they would eject their rubbish from, this machine up here. So you've got Chief Petty Officer's mess in there. Notice just on the right there, they've got an ashtray.
Yeah, duty-free tobacco.
Because if your captain was a smoker, he might allow you to smoke on board as well. So this is the gas ejector. So gas is basically rubbish. And this is where you would put the rubbish in bags. They would then soak up and become heavy with water in order to then be able to be weighed down enough to be ejected, and so they wouldn't float to the surface and give any position away. If you'd like to come into the control room, I can show you the red lights that I'm going to show, if you'd like. So these are those periscopes that we saw on the outside. This is the search periscope that's wider, field of vision. And this is the attack periscope that's much narrower. And in order to use this attack periscope, the curtains would be closed either side of this control room. All the lights would be switched off, save for one red bulb that would be over the coxswain's seat there. Obviously, he drives the submarine, he needs to be able to see what he's doing. And those lights would be switched off for half an hour before the operator was able to use this periscope in order to help his eyes adjust. And obviously they would keep those lights off for the whole time he's using it, and also to make sure that not a chink of light is coming out of that aperture at the top of the periscope to potentially give their position away. Because if you remember, that attack periscope is much narrower at the top than that search periscope was. So at night time on board, the lights would be turned to red light. This is how the crew would know it was night time. So these red lights here are called baby's bums. So those would be on during the night, and then during periscope operation, so in actual fact that red light would actually be focusing down there. But this is what the conditions in the control room would be like when this attack periscope was in use. Wow. There we go. This is everything that you see in the event of counter-attack or attack.
Yeah, brilliant.
So here we've got communications dials. Just over there in the corner we have the torpedo launching chair over there. This is all communications. This is my favourite because it's the ballast tanks. And I think it's just because it's so shining. I love it.
It's more complicated than an aircraft.
Oh, it's incredible, isn't it? Yeah, it feels like we're on the space shuttle or something, doesn't it? Very interesting. If I could just squeeze past you, please. Sorry. So these are also these are the controls for the masts that all stick out of the fin. And these are the heads, which is what we keep. And then,
No toilet paper.
sorry?
There's no toilet paper.
This is a bathroom. There would be a shower that would be erected in the hospital when I'm back to the thing to use it. And then this is galley. Oh, it's tiny. These are V16 supercharged diesel engines designed and built here at Chatham Dockyard. And they are so Admiralty Standard Range 1. These engines don't actually power this submarine. They run, and with the help of these generators here at the front, they recharge the batteries. And the batteries are what powers the submarine. So when we were walking through the junior rates mess, we walked over 300 tonnes of batteries. So all the power comes off those for the submarine. This is never run directly from these engines. But to run these engines, that could be done at periscope depth, so below the waterline. You would be below the waterline, you could stick 2 masts out of the fin called snort masts. One brings in fresh air and one expels exhaust, and that kind of circular way of intaking and expelling the air is how they could then run those engines safely below the waterline, just having their exhaust sticking out of the top there. So they wouldn't have to surface, they wouldn't have to give their position away. And they could also use that snort mast system to refresh stale air on board as well, which by the sounds of it they needed to. But if you're interested in seeing one of the battery cells, we have a museum at the other end of the site called Steam Still and Submarine, and they have one of the single battery cells there. So this room here is the power distribution. So all of these dials basically tell the operators where the power and how much power has been distributed amongst all different areas of the boat. And then this is a final hatch. It's a little bit trickier, this hatch. It's a little bit higher. Okay.
Just be careful.
Yeah.
So we're in the stoker's mess, and stokers are engineers, electricians and mechanics, and below our feet, below these mats, are access hatches down into workshops. So there was workshop space below our feet, so they could then access those if they needed to fix anything on board. This used to be a torpedo compartment. You might be able to see just at the end there are 2 filled in torpedoes. They used to house Mark 20s, they were phased out. But don't worry, because that space then came in very handy for keeping all the beer cold. Not an inch of space is ever wasted when you're on board a submarine. So, if you'd like to make your way out the top there, up the ladder, there's a lovely view at the other end